today we'll be exploring a practice that is really founded on doing as little as possible. So, parking passes are done. Next on my list, welcome. Thank you for coming, I really appreciate it. I'm humbled and honored by your presence. Anything that I do here is out of profound obedience and gratitude to the Buddha and to the teachers that came after him. And like it's not just a line in my bio. My desire to help how I can is rooted in the profound revolution that the teachings of the Buddha Dharma has created in my own life and understanding. So may it be of service to you. I guess all the housekeeping is done. You got parking passes and tea. Okay. If you'll allow me to take a moment and offer a prayer of supplication. There's this beautiful idea that's present in the earliest tradition, the earliest Buddhist tradition, but gets more and more developed over time. You can imagine Buddhism when it begins, this tiny circle, originally just 6 people, originally just one, of course, but then the first 5 people that the Buddha taught, this is the entire Sangha. And of course the Buddha was very clear that there were awakened people throughout all time and space. There have always been Buddhas, and that he invented nothing. He simply rediscovered this like a woodcutter discovers an old path overgrown with plants leading to an ancient city. This tiny Sangha grew and grew and grew over time, of course. But when the Sangha is that small, it's you and 5 or 6 or 10 or 15 people that you all know each other. It has a different flavor from when there are thousands of practitioners separated by language and culture and time and space. You can remember the heroically brave scholar monks and nuns who would literally walk thousands of miles to retrieve teachings and take them back and get them translated. China, Tibet, Nepal, Bhutan, India, Sri Lanka. So there's this beautiful idea that it always takes 2. This work of awakening is always at least, at bare minimum, a relational thing between us who are asking for help and a Buddha, a Bodhisattva, a teacher. We want some help. We go to them, we say, hey, this doesn't seem right. I want you to help me with this. And they say, well, I'll do what I can. So the idea that is very present in the Mahayana tradition is that if there were not suffering beings asking for help, there would never be Buddhas. There would never be Bodhisattvas, because it takes that natural, intuitive, relational exchange. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. I bow to the Blessed One, to the Fortunate One, to the Worthy One, to the fully self-awakened One. Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, teachers, ancestors, parents, and well-wishers, please hear me. I'm asking for your help to do some small amount of good. Please bless me that this class will bear fruit and be of assistance to the wonderful people in this room, and to the wonderful people in their lives, and to the wonderful people in their lives, and to all beings throughout all time. I agree. All right. So, we are here today to learn and practice in community with Tilopa's 6 nails, an ancient and timeless and incredibly practical and simple meditation instruction that you can apply whether at the very beginning of your path, somewhere in the middle, hard to tell where we are, or at the very end. It's deceptively simple on its surface, and you could explore the profound depths of this instruction for the rest of your life and never truly be done with it. So you can see on the board that someone with much better penmanship than myself wrote that, and even got a little inventive. I love that. And then the person who wrote it, my darling wife, Kalita, said, "Hey, come over here and put the pen in your hand and pretend like you're writing it so we can post it on Instagram." I was horrified. I was like, "No, that's dishonest." And she's like, "No one thinks you wrote that." So, anyway, I had to come clean because I couldn't possibly. Okay, so this is what we're going to do right now, just to start. I'll say the number, and then we'll all say it together, and we'll just go through like that. And as we chant the actual instruction, just imagine, in fact, just take a second and look over the list, and just imagine the feeling of that list, the feeling of that thing, that fabrication. All of these happen naturally, of course. They all arise in all of us. These are all patterns that we share. Some of us more so than others, this one or that one. And over time, that seems to be one of the real kind of markers for practice, delineating or maybe putting on a spectrum beginning practitioners, intermediate and advanced practitioners. The real difference between a beginning practitioner and an advanced practitioner is an advanced practitioner knows what kind of a knucklehead they are and how much mischief they get up to. A beginning meditator is like, oh boy, watch this. I'm going to do good, and I'm going to, they want to kind of insert, they want to kind of do a transplant of this calm and this holiness and this beauty and this purity that they see in the Buddha and the teachings. And they're like, I'm going to just add that in there, and it's going to, and totally, great vibe, great attitude, go for it. But the more and more, the further and further you get, the more intimate you get with the ways that you trick yourself and the ways that you get up to mischief. And these are 5 kinds of mischief we all get up to. Totally normal, totally natural. So as we go through and kind of chant them, see if you can get a vibe for each one, and then as you say it, as the sound vibrations leave your mouth, see if you can kind of imagine letting go of that fabrication. Just refraining from doing it, letting it unravel and pass away. So recalling, of course, is from the past. Imagining would be future. Thinking would be that kind of, and we'll get into detail, but thinking is like, I'm sitting now and is this the right, how am I doing that? Okay, no. That kind of papancha. Examining, kind of like, am I doing this right? Am I not doing this right? How am I doing? Okay, that kind of thing. And then controlling, trying to manage your experience and make it better. And then rest is just letting it all go and just resting. So, all right, y'all, get your good chanting voices in. 1, don't recall. Just letting it go. 2, don't imagine. 3, don't think. 4, don't examine. 5, don't control. 6, rest. Thank you. All right. Now, who was Tilopa? Tilopa lived in India in the 10th/11th century, maybe born 988, and is regarded as one of the most important ancestors of the Vajrayana Buddhist tradition, which we know today mainly in the form of Tibetan Buddhism. Now, our beloved Jampa is a member of the Kagyu tradition, and they regard Tilopa as their founder. Tilopa was a devoted student of the Buddha and originally took monastic vows. He had a series of visionary experiences that indicated to him that he was maybe not really doing it up to his aptitude, or maybe kind of missing the point. And began training with many different teachers through many different traditions. Tilopa was a student and master of apparently all the major streams of Indian Buddhism and Tantric Buddhism in his day. And this is something I wanted to mention because within Buddhism, the major differences between the dozens and dozens of lineages, traditions, schools, and sects are primarily differences of approach, of pedagogy. You know, pedagogy is a word you don't hear a lot, but it's like, the study of teaching, if that's right. Close enough? There's a couple students of pedagogy in the room. I want to make sure I'm doing it right. So, basically, the question is how to convey the utterly ineffable, counterintuitive, upside-down, completely liberating truths of awakening most effectively, given the vast differences in time, place, language, culture, etc., even ways of conceptualizing what's wrong. Like the fundamental misery of human life is conveyed in so many different ways, in so many different languages and cultures, etc., etc. So you will always find hardcore partisans of every tradition who are like, this is right and that's wrong, and that's totally, may it serve them well. My own teacher, my Dzogchen teacher, James Lowe, likes to talk about, in Tibet and Nepal, all the manner of hijinks and mischief that great teachers used to get into because libraries cost money, pens and inks cost money. Who's going to get the resources and the donations for that month or that year? Japan was full of that kind of thing, where one school of Zen would basically fight another school of Zen for the favor of the emperor. It was life or death for these people. However, I think for us, if we're lucky, even though in our shared 2,600-year game of telephone that we're playing with the old man and all teachers after him, even among these real hardcore partisans that are like, no, Kagyu is the right way of understanding the Buddha's teachings, not Nyingma, not Gelugpa, not, whatever. Anyone who calls himself a student of the Buddha has to negotiate and integrate some basic foundational teachings, namely the Four Noble Truths, the Triple Training, and maybe most importantly, I would argue most importantly, the understanding that under the influence of clinging, aversion, and delusion, we make our own suffering. We make our samsara. Samsara isn't a place you go to if you're bad. Samsara isn't, like a cartoon hell with demons, rotating you on burning pyres or whatever. Samsara is that instant that you compare. It's that instant that there are others, capital O. The moment that the universe gets chopped up into me and everything else, self and other, self and world, subject, object, that's samsara. And that primordial confusion is the basis for all clinging, all aversion, and all delusion. So it's tough, of course, because that's how awareness works when it's localized in an organic being walking around. You know, when we were, maybe back when we were monkeys in a tree, it was maybe not so much. We hopped out of the tree and we started doing things, and we started using these, and we started evolving language, and all of a sudden, I don't know if you've ever read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Anybody? Okay. So and so many years ago, we came out of the trees, and that was regarded as a terrible idea ever since then. Lots of people were upset about it, and rightly so. It seems to be a kind of inherent bug in our consciousness. And it's also a feature, because like I've said before, if my consciousness and awareness is localized here, then I know that's sharp, I shouldn't step on it, I can eat that, I need to watch out for that person, ... Great for survival, terrible for happiness. So, the second we stop making samsara, the second we wake up out of the dream of separation, we enter into nirvana. Nirvana is not some place that you go after you die if you're a good Buddhist. It's this very world. There is not a hair's breadth difference between samsara and nirvana. The difference is in here. So, put another way, awakening is not a thing to be manufactured or borrowed or taken or bought from somewhere outside yourself. It's always already there. To put it another way, a way that Tilopa would recognize, your mind, the mind of all beings, and the mind of all the Buddhas, same mind. The Six Nails is a concise set of instructions by which we can skillfully get out of our own way and train in relaxing our kind of habitual neurotic tendencies, see above list, and train in relaxing into the impossibly vast mind of all the Buddhas, which is our very own mind. The title of the original teaching is Six Nails of Key Points. And I'm not going to read you the Tibetan because I would butcher it. But it neatly maps to the English translation, the English idea of hitting the nail on the head. It goes right to the point and sticks in deep and true, and you're done. You just get it in there. Perfect, one shot. It's literally only 6 words long in the Tibetan. So this is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 words here. But in the Tibetan, just like in the Pali language and Sanskrit, you can just add a prefix on these words to be like, not that, not that, not that, not that, not that, this. You can find on your handout the simplest literal translation, a slightly more expanded translation, and then a very fleshed out translation with some instructions embedded in it. Depending on your kind of predilections and how you learn things, the 11 words might be plenty, but I like going in a little more and fluffing it out a little bit and kind of exploring it. Helps me kind of get a handle on it. I think the reason, this was something that, I'm sure you have this experience where you practice for a while and then you figure something out that maybe someone told you 100 times I know that's been my case. Like the number of times that some teacher sat up in a place like this and told me something, I'm like, oh yeah, totally. But it takes about 100 times sometimes for me. And I'm like, it means, whatever it is, insert thing here that blew my mind that I probably could have gotten the first time I heard it. One of those things for me was that we bring ourselves to the cushion. When we walk in that door, we bow, we get our cushion, and we sit down, and we're like, oh, hell yeah. Like, I'm so glad I'm here. I get to sit down in community. This is wonderful. And that person that just glared, I'm talking about myself, that person who just glared at their fellow driver because they didn't use their turn signal when I was behind them. That same person just sat down here, and he didn't go anywhere. He didn't do a quick swap with the Buddha. He's that same guy. So when you come in and sit down, all of your tendencies, all of your predilections, all of your patterning come in, and you bring them with you and sit down. And that's exactly how it is. That's exactly perfect. Because if it weren't that way, meditation would be worth nothing. Meditation is for me and you, and it's for those wounds in my heart and my trauma and my patterning, etc., etc., etc. But as a consequence, that's how my practice goes. That's how I bring my practice. So if I'm prone to tuning out, if I'm prone to, for me personally, my kind of type is I want to add pleasurable experiences to experiences that are either not pleasurable or experiences that are neither pleasurable nor unpleasurable. In the classic Abhidhamma commentary on the suttas, they would call that a greedy type or a clinging type. I'm always trying to add pleasure or manufacture or fabricate pleasure. And that's, if you sat with me long enough, that's something I talk about a lot. Like, didn't that feel good? And there's value in that. If you can find, my mind is naturally gravitates to pleasure. So if I can develop that locating pleasure in the body and in the breath when I sit, it becomes a very skillful way for me to lock in. But as a consequence, if I'm not having a good time on the cushion, I'm sitting there trying to fabricate pleasure, or anticipate pleasure, or remember pleasure. And that's a problem because now I've gone somewhere else. I'm no longer there in a really deep, profound way that I could be. So, our dear friend Tilopa basically made an entire, these are the 5 things that maybe he did, or his students did, or maybe he was able to figure out. These are the most common 5 things that I'm seeing in people. And he invites us to, and this is really important, learning about the ways that you get into mischief, the way you trick yourself, the stuff you get up to isn't meant to punish yourself with it. This isn't a stick to beat yourself with. And it's not even like you recite it once when you sit and then you won't do it again. And then if you do it, you're a bad person or you're failing at meditation. It's rather when you notice yourself doing it, drop it. It's so soft. Okay, everybody look at this? Okay, now look away. It's so soft, right? That didn't take any energy at all. And attention is even less energy than the energy it takes to look away from an object. And then the last thing I just want to kind of restate again is when you catch yourself doing one of these things, before you drop it, notice the connection. Notice the feeling. What what is getting fed? This is like so valuable, and this is something that the Theravada traditions, the Vipassana traditions spend a lot of time on, is noticing, really noticing the way we get hooked. So, and also it's really common to, when we are doing a practice that involves some kind of redirection or some kind of dropping the bait, very often it's like reflexive. Like we think we're doing a good job when we're really fast. It's not a race. You've got an extra couple seconds. Just take a second. What's going on? What's the flavor? What's happening for you? Is there an emotional flavor? Maybe even explore it like a question. If I stopped controlling, what would happen? And this is something that's come up when I bring people the do nothing practice. I've had people literally tell me, but if I do nothing and I catch myself kind of fabricating the whole meditation period, I've wasted a whole meditation period. It's like, oh my God, A, how terrible, and B, you haven't wasted it. Like, what a valuable thing to sit there and watch, like, oh, I'm doing that thing. What does that taste like? What's happening? What's arising for me? And what if I were to let it go? So when, not if, but when you catch yourself doing it, just take a couple seconds and really sink in. And maybe even just the awareness of it is enough. Because remember, nothing unravels, nothing changes faster than thoughts and feelings and states of mind. Yes, sir?
Listening would seem to be examining.
Say that one more time.
Noticing in that way.
Yeah.
Would seem to be examining.
Yeah, it could be. I think the angle with this is when the mind does it habitually, notice that. So it's not a matter of you're not allowed to do any of these things ever. It's more like notice when the mind does that thing. Volition is a really interesting animal in the meditation program. And noticing volition, and noticing when you're not choosing something, but it's happening. And just noticing it and even just noticing it. Yeah, and it's very light. And we'll get into the deeper explanation of the kind of fluffed out. Any other questions before we take our first 5-minute break?